Shalom, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to the Gnostic Mormon and the Strangite Herald, which are two things that I work on simultaneously. Now, in the discussion of the scriptures and the breakdown of what's what, we may well understand that there was an original Torah, and there were subsequent teachings that are with Torah to help explain the Torah and our sacred histories given to prophetic historians by the Spirit help us to understand these. And the first and foremost is Moses. Now we should know that Moses, within what we call Torah, there's the book of Torah of Yahweh, which is the book of the law of the Lord. That's the most important part of Torah. That's the real Torah. And the traditions talk about how we received it and how we interpret it. Now, we know that there were original manuscripts, and the original scrolls, much of them have been lost. But there were authorized copies made onto plates of brass, which would preserve them and help protect the integrity of the text. Now we know that in the book of the law of the Lord, James in his introduction says that there was one authorized copy of the book of the law of the Lord on metallic plates. Now, he doesn't go so far as to say that the brass plates of Laban are the authorized copy. In saying that there was one authorized copy does not mean that there was only one authorized copy. And we understand this language in James's notes in the book of the law itself. Because when he's explaining how the Book of Mormon says someone ought to have one wife, and it says in Scripture to say one wife does not mean only one wife, it means at least one wife in ancient speak. So that same principle being taught in the book of the law can be applied to other passages that are found in the book of the law of the Lord, and that's one. So the assumption that there was only one set of metal plates containing the book of the law is not a wise assumption, but it is wise to understand that the copies were controlled, there were not many of them, and that they were lost within Israel. Maccabees talks about there were scrolls containing the law that were destroyed intentionally, and that reduced the number of copies dramatically. David Farriman, in his revelations, has informed us that the brass plates of Laban were specifically controlled by the house of Laban, by the house of Laban being prominent among the descendants of Joseph. He was able to keep this authorized copy for that tribe. And when we say authorized, that there was one authorized copy, it may be that was an authorized and certified copy, that it was accurate, but tribal heads may still have had the opportunity to replace plates. Now, for instance, you can still get an interpolation if you have a set of brass plates, because you can make a blank plate, you can open the rings, and you can replace one plate for another. So you still have the possibility of some variation. But what the Lord told David was that each tribe has their own stick, and they had their own copies, their primary or authorized copy by their tribe that is the official scriptures by which their tribe is governed. So the one that Nephi preserved, because he is from the tribe of Joseph, is for Joseph. So those brass plates rather than being the stick of Judah, are actually part of the stick of Joseph. And with all of the writings that are lost in that are still preserved and hidden in caves that were not translated, and all of the Book of Mormon, that would include the Book of Mormon, the sealed portion of the Book of Mormon that's sealed proper, and any portions between those two that were on the plates of Nephi. So that all constitutes the stick of Joseph. And they will be connected to the stick of Judah to be one in our hands. So from this, we can see that there's multiple tribes, that each tribe had its own authorized copy that's not authorized by Jerusalem, by the central government or the king or the highest chief high priest, but authorized by their tribal leaders. And for this reason, that can account for some discrepancies on various manuscripts of the Torah and the Old Testament and so forth. So we know that the breastplates of Laban contained the law because they knew already it contained the law. They didn't know what else it contained. So they went to go get the law, which is the book of the law of the Lord, and any subsequent law books that are well known. And then, in addition to that, Nephi gives an account of what else is on there, and he cites that there are 5 books by Moses on the plates themselves. He doesn't say that those are all the books that Moses wrote. He says that in addition to the law, there are 5 books of Moses. And just because there's a number 5, we immediately think Pentateuch. That is not a justifiable assumption, because it just so happens that the scriptures that come down to us, which are sparse and missing a lot of books, happen to have 5. Those people, without revelation, assumed that they were the only 5 books of Moses and referred to them as the 5 books, or the 5 scrolls, the Pentateuch, and also have called them the Torah proper. So what that leaves us is the possibility for other books by Moses. Nephi doesn't say which 5 books there actually was, but he does give an account of Adam and Eve, so we can assume that Bereshit, which is a traditional name, not a proper name, but the book of Moses containing Bereshit is among the 5. Now, Mauricio tells us that the sealed book of Moses was on a scroll, and it's called sealed because it was a separate book of Moses, sealed with his signet ring and handed down. And Nephi does not, obviously he had that, but he does not count that in his tally of books because they are not found on the brass plates. And he gave an accounting of that, but he didn't reveal that he also had a secret scroll of Moses. So that leaves some vagueness as to what books are available and that are coming forth. We can also find clues of this within the text of the sealed book of Moses, within the book of remembrance of Aki, which is the brother of Jared. Aki just means brother. So it's a shortened form of the title, the book of remembrance of the brother of Jared. And the books of 1st and 2nd Maccabees also have information on this account, as well as some of the Old Testament books. So you can get a bigger idea. Now, the book of the law of the Lord proper, it was among the plates that Nephi got. Now, we often think of the plates of Nephi as one set of plates bound with a ring. A book bound, like any book, that we might have, right? It's not necessarily the case that there's not multiple books of plates of different sizes to be referred to as the plates and not being specific. So we have to keep an open mind about that. The same goes for the brass plates. When Nephi went and got the brass plates, it's not to say that the entire collection was bound with one set of rings. There might have been several volumes to it, and if you had, if you said your scriptures consisted of the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, the Old and New Testaments, you might have several bound volumes, but if you say, I'm going to go get my scriptures, you might be grabbing all of them. And space was small on the plates, so Nephi doesn't explain everything in absolute detail. We have what we need to know, and beyond that, we should keep an open mind. It's not to say, and people will warn you about making assumptions and things like that. Having some guesses is not having a doctrine, okay? And that's the key point, is that when we can think about it, and there's nothing wrong with thinking about it, and even having some impressions and receiving revelation or just impression. But when we make definitive statements, even if we're 100% right by chance, or if it was revealed to us, it may not be appropriate to assert it as a definite because someone else might not know that, and it might conflict with an impression they currently hold. And that's not an important thing, but we don't want to make them defensive over it, because some people tend to hold on to things more tightly when they're under attack. Also, we don't want to give people, we want people to doubt what we say, to hold it in as open, right? We don't want people to believe it, us, when we're talking. We don't want people to throw our opinions and beliefs and impressions and ideas away either. We don't need everything definite and concrete. We need to stay in a position of learning. As things are unfolding, we get to reevaluate as new information comes along, and that's the best way to be. The trap of the scientific community is that they've often been very hostile and resistant to new ideas until they reach a tipping point. And so we can look at scientists as an example of what not to do in that regard, often persecuting people who were later vindicated, and individual people being embarrassed and so forth. This is not an ego exercise, so embarrassment doesn't exist for us, right? And oppression doesn't exist. And being teachable does. And so every time we think, well, that's it, I've got it, which is our ego wants to resolve things, our anxiety wants to resolve things. No, the Spirit is supposed to inform us not to be anxious ever. Moses, didn't know everything right away, and he was learning, and he made mistakes. So that's the way to stay, that as an example, right? Even if we happen to have all this wisdom we can share, but that's a wisdom that we can be an example of to those who may think they are right, but who yet have to learn something else, if that makes sense. And so that's where we are. But I would describe the book of the law of the Lord. There is a copy that Moses made that was kept in the Ark of the Covenant. And that would be authorized by Moses. One day, the book of the law of the Lord will be the book that connects all the different tribes together through that one book, and that they will all be one. And so each tribe may have a variation of it that may come forth. But in the comparison, and there may be some discrepancies between those, ultimately we will be able to look and see and learn things on how the Lord was able to either, get the parts of his message to the people that needed it. That's why people get a Bible that they need, even though it's got some errors in it from human beings. They get what they need to get to where they need to be in this life. So we can very well look at it that way. We don't need it to be a 100% authorized text. And as I've talked before, some vagueness does two things. One, it gives us some justification so that we're not condemned, for disobedience or not accepting it. 2, it allows us space and time to seek the Spirit and learn and make corrections and grow over a period, right? And it allows us to have unity, understanding that it's okay if somebody has this opinion and I have this opinion or idea or understanding or even what we believe to be a spiritual impression, that it cannot interfere with our unity. And that out of humility, though I may be certain, it could be me that eventually learns something deeper. And as a matter of fact, I would say that all of us will learn something deeper. So I don't believe that any of us have it 100%, because where would humility then come in as a lesson? So let us look at it that way. Let's keep an open mind about this. We know that there is a book of the law of the Lord given through, that there is a preeminence in the tribe of Judah. The law did come through Christ when he restored, and he was of the house of David. So the stick of Judah, and James Strang, being of the lineage of Christ in the house of David and being of the tribe of Judah, when he brought forth the book of the law of the Lord in 1850, it was the stick of Judah at that time, because he was Judah, and it was the staff or rod or stick that was given to him to lead the people. And we will connect. Some Latter-day Saints who have accepted that work are already connecting to that. They're already bringing the Book of Mormon and the stick of Joseph to connect with that. Other tribes will follow suit. Other sticks from each tribe will come forth, and they will all connect to the Book of the Law at some point.